Hello and welcome to LA Currents. I'm Ann Felice. Once one of the world's largest oil producers, Los Angeles would like to become a leader in going green, and they are headed that direction. This is in part thanks to an effort to cap oil drilling within the city of Los Angeles. Joining us today is Erica Blyther. She is Petroleum Administrator. We're so glad to have you with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
We're glad to have you on. Let's start with the big question. What's a Petroleum Administrator? What does that mean?
So historically, as you mentioned, one of the major population booms was when oil began in the 1800s, 1900s. So in 1892, Edward Doheny drilled one of the first oil wells in what's now Echo Park. As the city became more developed, they realized they needed to have someone to look at oil and gas leases. So in the 1950s and 1960s, the Petroleum Administrator position was created, and the focus was just on oil drilling. Over time, there was less drilling and production, and so the duties kind of faded away. But with the Aliso Canyon disaster, as well as a lot of concerns about fracking, there was a realization there needed to be a renewed focus on petroleum, as well as natural gas, and safety. And so this office is the Office of Petroleum Natural Gas Administration, as well as safety. And so our goal is really to be in charge of oil information, so it focuses on the drill sites, the pipelines, as well as refineries.
It's a lot. Now, looking at your background, you have a bachelor's degree in environmental science and policy from Duke, and then you went on to get a master's degree in environmental occupational health right here in Southern California, Cal State Northridge. You've always been passionate about the environment?
Yes, absolutely. So I grew up, I enjoyed doing science and things, and so my parents would buy me like microscopes and things for Christmas gifts, and I love looking at things, and so I always loved science. So I knew I wanted to do something science related. So of course, when I heard about the Earth's crisis, I became more and more concerned about things. So I studied environmental science in school. Really, really happy to be able to apply that to what I do every day.
And then working into petroleum and natural gas, is that something that's always sort of been like in the back of your mind, or is that something that is sort of new to you? Like this is where I can really make a difference.
I grew up in Los Angeles, and I grew up in what's Windsor Hills, so it was in Los Angeles County. Mm-hmm. But my parents used to actually get royalty checks from what was the Inglewood oil field. And at the time it was Stocker Resources that operated it. There have been many different oil operators over the time, but oil's always been part of what we lived with. And so I remember driving to Fedco, you'd see the oil pumping up and down. Yep. You'd see the oil jacks pumping up and down, pump jacks. And so just always grew up. And then it was later on I realized what the health effects were. Where I went to school, there were people that had asthma, there were people who had these things. And so there are a large portion of communities of color that live near these oil sites. And so the reasons why I relate to redlining, homeowners loan corporation maps that were done years ago, but still kind of decide who lives where next to what hazards.
I had never even thought about that the oil jacking, as you were saying, has anything to do with your health. How are the two related?
So there are a lot of concerns about the air quality impacts from oil drilling. Mm-hmm. So the concern is, of course, the oil itself. So oil's petroleum, those are carbon atoms, and some of them make shapes that are sometimes very destructive. So like benzene is a concern. Mm-hmm. Volatile chemicals, those are things that can cause cancer, and so that's a concern for people. Another thing, of course, is the methane that is sometimes released. So when you drill for oil, you get natural gas too. So a lot of times oil and gas go together. But that natural gas, if it leaks, that causes a lot of environmental concerns. So methane is a much more potent greenhouse gas even than carbon dioxide. Some speculate as much as 84 times as powerful.
And what does methane do to our climate?
It is a reactive gas that can destroy the ozone layer and just really heat up the planet. So it can really cause a lot of health, not only health effects in the short term, but in the long term in terms of climate change.
How many active oil sites are there right now in Los Angeles?
So there are currently 15 active drill sites, but drilling implies there are new wells being created. These are wells that have been around for a while, so they're existing drill or production sites where there's oil extraction occurring. A lot of them are in Council District 15, a number also in Council District 5, and the drill sites just are where the oil happened to be naturally deposited. There's no place where people live closer to oil than in Los Angeles. So Texas is more productive, but there's a lot of distance between people and the oil fields. Here, people literally are living right on top of the oil fields. They're in their backyards, front yards, right next door.
Right. Do you know, as I said in my introduction, we were once one of the world's largest oil producers. We handled a lot of oil production back in the day. Any numbers come to mind when we're talking about oil production currently here in Southern California?
So the oil production has gone up and down with pandemic. So it drastically stopped in the pandemic because everybody stopped driving. So immediately there was a huge dip. But numbers approximately about 7,500 barrels per day of oil are produced, which sounds like a lot. But when you look at Texas, it's about 4.4 million barrels a day.
Oh.
So it's a very de minimis amount.
Right.
But I believe approximately 31% of the oil that's produced in California goes to the local refineries.
So it stays here?
It stays here. Yes, the oil that's produced here stays here. We also import quite a bit to be refined.
So what are your thoughts about the state of California going to electric cars? That would diminish the need for oil, very, very quickly. They're talking, 2035 is when they would like to, which is, obviously a ways off, a lot can change. But what are your thoughts when you hear things like that? Is that a solution or is that just more problem?
I think it's a potential solution. I think it has to be done in a way that makes sense. So it has to be affordable to everyone, it has to be reliable. And we recently had the whole power grid system. And so if every car is electric, it's something to consider. How will all the cars manage to function? Some things are not going to be able to be electrified quickly. So for example, planes are not going to go to electricity anytime soon. So there's still going to be a need for oil for at least a few different types of specialized operations.
The biggest environmental concern in regards to the oil drilling in Southern California, you mentioned there's health concerns, there's long-term health concerns. Also the environmental impact. Talk a little bit more about that. How does drilling for oil affect our environment, short-term as well as long-term?
Right. So my office did a health report in 2019, and it surveyed all the health available information that was available at that time. And since that time, there have been a lot more local health studies confirming that there's a huge impact on communities and people who breathe that air. So asthma, headaches, nosebleeds, as well as long-term conditions just affecting health. Environmentally, of course, there's a lot of concerns about climate change. And as I mentioned, with methane production, with the oil production, there are volatile organic chemicals, NOx, nitrogen dioxide, hydrogen sulfide. That's something that smells bad. And there was a big concern in Carson recently about hydrogen sulfide was causing a huge number of odor complaints. Hydrogen is sometimes part of the oil process depending on the oil deposits and what's underground. Sometimes that can be a concern for a community. But again, the methane and what's being released is the biggest concern for driving climate change.
LA, as I mentioned, is trying to lead the charge in going green. There's a lot of different things that, not just in Los Angeles, but the entire state of California. In Los Angeles, though, are there other cities that you look towards, large metropolitan cities such as our own, that you go, you know what, they're really doing it right? Is there a blueprint maybe that you guys look at that comes from someplace else?
We're really on the leading edge for, I think, going green. I think the city of Los Angeles, California in general,
yes,
but definitely the city of Los Angeles is doing a lot of things. So we have the Green New Deal, we have what's called the Sustainable City Plan, but all of these are looking at ways to be greener. I know the mayor works a lot with C40, which is a group of different 40 cities that were really leading the way towards being green, looking at ways of helping the planet and environmental sustainability. And so that whole coalition has been looking at ways, but really LA is really taking the lead in a lot of its initiatives and things that are occurring.
That's exciting, but it's also it's a lot. It's a big responsibility. It's like it would be much nicer if there was someone who was really doing it well, and we could just kind of sort of take those ideas. In the meantime, folks who have questions and want more information can log on to the website. You see it there on the screen. It's dpw.lacity.org, and they can find everything they need on there until your new website shows up.
Yes.
Erica, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
It's been
you.
a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate being here.
This has been LA Currents. I'm Ann Police. We'll see you next time.